Hello, this is Claus Jensen presenting Game 7 of the World Chess Championship match between Anand and Gelfand. And halfway through the 12 classical games, we had a rest day yesterday. And I recorded a few videos with old masters like Morphy and Steinitz, because I thought the first 6 games of this championship match had been quite dull. And I cannot tell if Anand or Gelfand were inspired by those videos. They probably were not, but I can tell that we got the most exciting game of the match so far. And again today, Gelfand is white and Anand is playing black, and for the 4th time we had a Slav defense: d4, d5, c4, c6, knight c3, knight f6, e3, e6, knight f3, and Anand chooses this a6 line. And after 2 times b3 and 1 time queen c2, Boris Gelfand has a 3rd shot against this a6 line from Anand, and he plays c5 here, which is of course an interesting option. Knight bd7, queen c2, and here queen c2 is probably designed to prevent knight e4, and the normal reaction from black should probably be to play e5 very soon. Perhaps already now e5, d takes, knight g4, but perhaps Anand didn't like knight a4, knight g to e takes e5, knight takes, and knight b6. Perhaps Anand didn't like this. So instead Anand played b6, and this was clearly the alternative to e5, clearing the b and c files, but also accepting an isolated a pawn, which could of course be a target for white at some point. C takes b6, knight takes b6, and for a change in this match we are out of book already here at move 8. Refreshing. Hopefully the players will just play chess now. Bishop d2, c5, rook c1, c takes d4, e takes d4, and bishop d6. And this is of course a completely different position type than in the 3 previous Slav games. Gelfand is having a pawn majority on the queen side, but also an isolated d-pawn, while Anand is having an isolated and weak pawn on a6, and he has a problem bishop on c8. In the game followed bishop g5 from Gelfand, castles, bishop d3, h6, bishop h4, bishop b7, castles. And in this position, and I think this could be an exaggeration, but for the first time in the match we see a move that has risks to it, but also possible benefits. And it's very interesting and very nice to see some fighting spirit from Anand when he played queen b8 in this position. And of course the option for Gelfand was to take on f6, and then he has an idea of playing knight e2 with the idea of transferring the knight to h5, and this could be a strong idea. But on queen b8, Gelfand instead played bishop g3, which is of course the safe option, but also the boring one. And right here I believe Anand won a psychological battle. When I watched this game I thought, okay, if Gelfand really plays bishop g3 here, he shows that he hasn't got the guts to take up the challenge of an open fight, which was invited by Anand here. But bishop g3 was the move played. Rook c8 from Anand, queen e2, Now bishop takes, h takes, and queen d6. Rook c2, knight b d7, rook f to c1, and rook a b8. And this is of course a very interesting position. And it seems that Gelfand has some pressure on the black position here. He played knight a4 here. And I'm pretty sure that the best continuation for Anand here was rook takes c2, rook takes, bishop c6, now activating this bad bishop, knight c5 and bishop b5. This would eliminate the bad bishop problem for Anand. But instead he played knight e4 here. And then came rook takes, and now Anand cannot recapture with the rook because it loses a pawn after rook takes, bishop takes e4, d takes, and queen takes e4. So he had to play bishop takes c8 here. And then an interesting option for Gelfand was to play queen e1 here. Bishop b7, queen a5. This was an idea, again addressing this weak pawn on a6, and also rook c7 is in the air, and yeah, possibilities for white. But instead Gelfand played queen c2, which is also a good move, and now comes, I think there are several logical alternatives for Anand here, and they all include some defense of this e4 knight, which is attacked twice by the bishop and the queen. And one option was knight d to f6, and another option was bishop b7. But in the game Anand played a very strange move, if you ask me, and I don't know how to explain it. He played g5, but what I can say here at this position already after 23 moves is that it's an interesting position, and both players are down to 30 minutes for the last 16 moves. And now Gelfand plays queen c7, and queen takes, rook takes, and now the computer likes knight e to f6, but still Gelfand has some nice pressure on Anand and the black position, knight c5 for example. But in the game Anand played f6, and I think the last few moves from Anand were a bit strange, and now Gelfand takes on e4 and plays knight d2, and the pawn on the e4 is now hanging, so f5. But then knight c4, knight f6, and knight c5, and now Gelfand has a dominant pair of knights here, and the bishop on c8 is practically dead, because there are no available squares for this bishop, and the white position is already very promising. Knight d5, rook a7, knight b4, defending the pawn on a6, and there were alternatives, a3 here, or perhaps even stronger, knight d6, but in the game Gelfand played knight e5, knight c2, knight c6, rook takes b2, and I'll try some tricks here with only a few minutes on the clock for the first time in the match, both players are in some sort of time trouble. Rook c7, and perhaps here e3 was a move, but Anand played rook b1 check, king h2, and then e3. Gelfand captured the bishop, gave a check on c7, and then played knight e5. And now comes e2 from Anand, but knight takes e6 is decisive, and here Anand resigned the game instead of trying rook h1 check, king h1, e1 queening, king h2, after which he would have to give up his queen anyway, not to be mated, because let's take a move, just make a move, knight a5 for example, and then knight g6 check, and rook g7 checkmate. So after knight takes e6, black is lost. And I think this was a very interesting game where Anand seemed to be in control and have an okay position until he played a few strange moves, g5 being the most strange move in the game. And Gelfand scored a very important victory here in Game 7, and it should be interesting to see how Anand reacts to this defeat in the 7th game of the World Chess Championship match. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you on my chess website at klausjensen.com. Bye bye for now.